What's a story you don't tell people because they wouldn't believe it? When I was 11 years old, I always used to take a shortcut through the local graveyard at night when coming back from the arcade. One night there was a storm and the graveyard was muddy. I fell off my bike and hit my elbow and head, so I took cover under a grave house to check if I was bleeding or something else. It was already dark, but I could see 3 men carrying a bag and dumping it in an opened hole, and they proceed to cover it. I saw everything. When they left, I went to the guard's place and told him what I just saw. He told me to calm down and gave me a cup of milk and told me to stay there while he went to check for himself. When he came back, he looked at me and didn't say a word. He called the police, but when they arrived I heard him told them I was on drugs and that I was lying. I freaked out, so I jumped out of the window, over the fence, and ran home. They found a decapitated body 3 days later. That 1st of April last year, when Coffee Stain Studios was about to release Goat Simulator, their router died and they had no internet access at all. So I'm working at their ISP, and they called. So I went out to them with a new beefier router and got the network up and running again after 1 hour. And that's when I saved the release of Goat Simulator. When I was about 8, my mother's boyfriend took me to the batting cages. The machine shot about 5-10 baseballs and then you had to put more money in. I had already been batting for about a half hour and my mom's BF told me this is my last set. So I was extra focused. I started swinging away at my final set. And I shit you not, on my last ball I swung and hit it back into the machine. I couldn't believe it. I still kind of don't believe it. So I don't really expect anyone else to, I guess. But it happened. TLDR. Hit the last ball back in the machine at the batting cages. I was a homeless drug addict living in the streets of San Francisco. I lived outside for like 2 years. I ate out of dumpsters and injected drugs outside. I am married now. I have 3 kids. I just finished 2 years as the PTA treasurer. Despite being a convicted felon, I tell some people my story. I don't bother with the majority. They wouldn't believe it. That in grade 4 I made a noise to imitate the bell before it went off. Basically screamed at the right pitch and got kids to leave for recess early. Nobody believes me. I used up an entire large Bic lighter once before I lost it. When I lived in China, people often asked me what was different about life in the US. I told them in the US we don't keep small hot water heaters in our bathrooms. We have a large hot water heater in our basements that send hot water to every faucet in the house. I got called a liar enough times that I finally stopped bringing it up. In the US I was once asked the same question and I told them that in China they have small wall-mounted hot water heaters in their bathrooms for showers. Again I got called a liar. There is just no pleasing some people. My girlfriend doesn't leave any hair in the bathroom after she showers at my place. Hand hairs don't really shed. In middle school, a kid told me he heard on the radio that a plane had just crashed into a building. This was on the afternoon of Monday. I had a girl in middle school touch my no area without my consent. I always told her to stop, but being the scrawny kid in school she was stronger than me and I couldn't get her to stop. I started skipping the class I had her in and got in trouble for it just because I didn't want her touching me. I told the teacher, but of course she said girls don't do those type of things and asked the girl if I was the one harassing her. TL. This pisses me off so much. That is the reason why men don't say shti. My foot was caught in an escalator. Most people think I'm full of it when I tell them, so I don't bother to anymore. Broke my toe kicking a balloon around. Know how you see those women in abusive relationships with a black eye and they're like, oh, I fell down the stairs and your bullshit meter goes off? I had a black eye once. It looked like I had the snot beat out of me. I fell down the stairs. When I was 8 I loved to climb into trees. One day it was very hot and I was playing outside in Speedos. Close to our house was a tree I just loved to climb. The branches were just perfect. This tree was surrounded by stinging nettle. You probably can guess it already. I did climb the tree that day with only my swimming trousers on. A branch broke and I fell right into the nettles. It hurt a lot. I jumped on my bike. Nettled from head to toe, and in a blind panic I drove direction home. This was on a small path going downhill. I lost control over my bike. Hit a pole with my head and fainted. My neighbor friend found me and she called my parents, who called 911. I was taken to hospital with a severe concussion and nettle poisoning. Once upon a time, long ago, the Toronto Maple Leafs won the Stanley Cup. It actually happened. But when I tell people, they insist it's just silly mythology. When I was 13, my dad started drinking with my 11-year-old sister. He told me he was going out with her to get dinner and I couldn't have any. He let her drive and she totaled the car. A cop came and let him go, and when CPS came to check on us, they did nothing. We told them we were okay out of fear and they closed our case. I used an entire tube of chapstick and still have it to this day. I'm never going to lose it. Ever. Not very hard to do when you eat it. It's believable. But at the time people didn't believe me. People would say that my town didn't have any wolves at all. But I was walking down my street in the middle of the night and a wolf was literally 5 feet away from me. I was walking one way and it was walking the other, but watched me the entire time. I'm so glad my house was closed. Of course now, 10 years later, people know there are wolves there. They kept telling me it was a dog. I know what a grey wolf looks like. My town has a lot of wildlife. I saw a huge moose running down my street. A deer with her baby. Cougars and plenty of bears. I went to Starbucks and they spelled my name as Kyle. I was hit by a Mack truck and had my head split open 10 years ago. They put my head back together and I am fine today. Most people don't believe I was hit by a Mack truck and survived. When I say I was it, I mean I was it. I was not in a car or anything. The truck lunged forward and hit me while I was walking. When I was about 21, I met Cheech Marin in a Greyhound bus station in Dothan, Alabama. I don't tell anyone about my past. My husband knows. Some family and some former friends. That is it. I'm now very quiet, reserved and a huge introvert. I will choose a night in at home alone, with husband and child, over anything else. However, I wasn't always this way. My early 20s I was a stripper. I traveled around the country working at various clubs. I had a twin and we'd go work features for a weekend before moving on. I dabbled in drugs, ecstasy and cocaine, and quit cold turkey one day after an acquaintance who was out partying with us died after I left. I've been clean since 2008. Nobody would believe me if I told them my past. They assume that I am just a shy, boring person, and I am happy to let them see that. It would blow my in-laws' minds though. I volunteer at a hospital and I met the Allstate commercial guy's mom. One summer I got together with my ex and we had sex. But nobody would believe me because they all see me as too docky. It might not be much, but when I was a kid, my family would take one of those big boats that you can sleep on when crossing countries. It was in February, so it was very cold outside, so I brought my touchscreen gloves because what kid didn't enjoy to play on an iPad in freezing weather? However, when we parked our car and brought our bags to the boat, I couldn't find my gloves. So my dad ran back and went looking for them. While my dad was gone, I check in my pocket and there they are. My gloves. I run to tell my dad I have them, but he thought I was joking. Because in his hand he held a pair of touchscreen gloves. Exactly my size. Even with a little hole over the left pinky finger. And he found them 3 meters away from our car. Maybe this ain't so hard believing. But just the chance of it happening is insane. Bro. Kids with iPads are old enough to say when I was a kid. When I had sex with my high school best friend in the park at 1 AM on top of the slide set behind an elementary school. Sounds crazy, but she was horny. I didn't know she was like that because all I knew about her was that she had a boyfriend and that's it. I later found out I was the 7th guy to sleep with her that week. Not a story, but a very, very minor claim to fame. You know those oft-told jokes? The sort of basic setup and punchline jokes? Somebody has to come up with them, right? And yet, you can't take credit for them. If someone told you they came up with one of those Michael Jackson or Space Shuttle Challenger jokes, would you believe them? Of course not. You'd think they were a crank. That said, I came up with a joke when I was 11 years old that made it into circulation and was retold to me few times in later years. But I couldn't really claim credit for it. I've only told a couple people I authored it. One of them made me look him in the eye and swear that it was mine. Without further ado, I give you that joke, clear's throat. Why did the baby cross the road? Asterisk. Because it was stapled to the chicken. Thanks. Folks, I've got another show at 9 PM. That one's a little blue. You might want to leave the kids in the hotel room for that one. Be sure to try the veal. I melt steel beams with jet fuel. My friends and I broke into a sketchy warehouse, appeared to be abandoned, out in some dark backwoods location. Anyways, we found what appeared to be an arm and a leg, human, in a pile with a bunch of deer parts. We all agreed to never speak of it again. Idiots. Call the F-King police. Oh geez, I'd tell you but you wouldn't believe it.